Well, welcome everybody to a brand new eGroups series for 2025. We have got a fantastic couple of weeks together talking about our new theme, our new vision for this very year. I'm joined first of all by Pastor Mark Collard. Hello Mark, how are you?
Hey Sam, good.
Good. And we're going to get things kicked straight off. So Pastor Mark, I'm not going to reveal anything. I'm just going to leave it to you to reveal to us. What are we chatting about? What are we going to be going after in this year?
Okay, well, if people don't know, what we like to do is at the end of 1 year, before we go into another year, kind of seek God and say, God, is there something particular that you would like us to focus on in a new year? And so we've done that for a few years, and we kind of call it our theme for the year. So last year, our theme was on the whole area of faith. The year before that, we talked about the glory of God. And this year, I actually got a theme while I was on sabbatical. So probably 4 or 5 months ago, it just started to drop into my heart. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, yep, this is a theme for us in 2025 as a church. And I think it's an exciting theme. I hope everyone else does. And the theme is that we're going into a year of risk and reward. A year of risk and reward. So that's what we're going to be talking about next 4 weeks.
So a year of risk and reward, and we've kind of talked a little bit as we've been planning these kind of these sessions, and what we want to do really as we're talking through these next couple of sessions is talk about what is a risk that we can take, but also how it can lead to a reward. That's kind of the idea of what we're talking about, isn't it?
It is, and we're not talking about just any old risk, like, go and drive in your car at 120 miles an hour and the risk of do I get caught, do I not get caught? Not talking about let's just take risks for the sake of risks, but it's the idea of what are the things that God is calling us to do that has a risk factor. Because in my reading of the Bible, that nearly all of the great stories that we love to look back on, and we're going to look at some of those stories, there was just a huge element of risk. And I think when you take risk out of the Christian journey, it can become quite boring. It can become quite ordinary. And if you look at the early church and you look at the things they did, the reward always came when they took a risk. I don't know if you've ever heard somebody say this before, but if you think about a fruit tree, they always talk about how the fruit is at the end of the branches. In other words, to get to the branches, you got to climb out on a limb. So the fruit is out on the limb. It's not where it's safe and secure. You got to go out on a limb. And so that's the whole idea of taking risks this year, letting God speak to us, responding to that, and recognizing sometimes we don't know whether it's going to work or not. That's the idea of a risk. If we knew it was going to work every time, it wouldn't be a risk. But I think God's going to call us individually and corporately to take some risks this year. And we don't know whether they're going to work, but we sense God is leading us. And I think we're going to see the biggest reward where we take the biggest risk.
Absolutely.
And so that's what I'm excited about.
And it's interesting what you said about the fact that really risk is part of our Christian life. Like you said, like you can't really go through life as a Christian without actually moments where you do feel like you need to take a risk. But you also mentioned about we're not just saying go and do some mad stuff and crazy things without a sense of like a God-ordained or a God-led risk. I mean, do you want to unpack that a little bit more for us?
Well, I actually love what Danny Guglielmucci says, who some of you may know of, and he's just a great minister. He's part of our church now in Australia. And he just says this, he says the greatest, the risks that come from revelation are always rewarded with results. So the risks that come from revelation, i.e., and I'm going to talk about one of those in just a moment, but when we have a revelation, in other words, we feel like God's speaking to us. We feel that nudge. We feel that encouragement. It's not I just picked it at random, but I sense God's asking me to do something. It's those risks that lead to the greatest rewards. And as I, look back on my journey as a leader, but also just as a Christian, it's always been the time when I've stepped out and I've done something and I thought, God, I think you're in this. I think you're leading me. And I look back now and I can see, wow, like the reward was huge. Even on a very practical level, very natural level. When I asked Monica out, and my wife. That was a risk when I proposed to her. It was a risk. It wasn't a guarantee that she'd say yes, but the reward, 21 years of marriage. So I just think there's great things that God has for us, but He's looking for that adventurous spirit that will really try something.
And what I love as well is that sense that these are God-led risks, aren't they? We're not taking risks because we want the rewards. We're taking risks because actually we want to hear where God's leading us in our life, don't we? And the beauty of faith and life with God is that actually in God's goodness, it leads to wonderful reward as well, doesn't it? Which is just awesome. It's so good.
So the story I wanted to share this morning is from Matthew chapter 14, and it's the story that is probably familiar, but I'm going to read it. It's Peter walking on the water. So if you've got a Bible, you might want to even pause this right now and get your Bible open. And in Matthew 14, in verse 22, it just says this: immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and cross to the other side of the lake while he sent the people home. And after sending them home, he went into the hills himself to pray. Night fell while he was there alone. Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble far away from land, for a strong wind had risen and they were fighting heavy waves. But about 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came to them walking on the water. And when the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. And in their fear, they cried out, "It's a ghost." But Jesus spoke to them at once and said, "Do not be afraid. Take courage. I am here." Now, this is the interesting bit. Then Peter calls to him and says, "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you walking on the water." And, I've got some questions. Why on earth did Peter ask that question in the first place? Why didn't he just say, "Jesus, please get in the boat"? But something about Peter said, "If you want me to come, I'm going to come." And then the answer in verse 29, "Yes, come." That's the revelation part. He heard from God, "Yes, come." So Peter went up to the other side of the boat, walked on the water towards Jesus. So for a while, Peter's walking on water. Peter is doing what no man in history has ever done or will ever do apart from Jesus. He's living this supernatural moment that came out of a moment of taking a risk of going on what Jesus told him to do. And then we know the rest of the story. But when he saw the strong winds and the waves, he was terrified. He began to sink. "Save me, Lord," he shouted. And Jesus immediately reaches out, grabs him, and says, "You have little faith. Why did you doubt me?" Gets back into the boat, and the wind stopped. And I love that story. It's a story probably many of us know, but I love this idea that Jesus turns up in the middle of a storm. Now, imagine for a moment it was calm. Imagine the water was calm and Jesus turned up and he said, "Get out of the lake, get out of the boat rather, walk to me." That would be like freaky enough.
Yeah.
But it's in a storm. Like they think they're going to die. I mean, I've never been in a storm that bad where I thought I was going to die, but they think they're going to die. And yet still, Jesus says, "Come." And still Peter asks the question, "Jesus, if you want me to come, I'll come." And so there's so many questions in there for me. Like what caused Peter to ask that question? And why didn't Jesus just say, "It's fine, Peter, sit in the boat, I'll come to you"? Like if that was my kids, I'd be like, "Don't even think about getting out of the boat. You settle down. You enjoy the security of the boat. You don't do anything crazy. That's over the top." But Jesus doesn't do that. In the middle of a storm, Jesus says, "Okay, if you're willing to take the risk, Peter, I'm willing to back you up in faith. Come." And so it's just an extraordinary story of Peter taking a risk that no one else was willing to take. He didn't have to take the risk. Jesus would have still loved him if he took the risk. Jesus would have still calmed the storm, I believe, if he didn't take the risk. But something in him decided, I want to be where Jesus is, and I want to do what Jesus is doing.
That's good.
And so I think that's the nature of a risk. Like if we just want to do what we've always done, let's keep on doing what we've always done. But I don't know about you, I feel like there's something in me that wants to experience more of God than I've experienced him to this point. And it's not going to happen in the security of my little boat.
And there's no perfect time either, is
No.
there? In the sense of, like you said, it could have been the most calm, serene moment on the lake, and Jesus could have said, "Come on, get out the boat." But actually, it really wasn't. Like, it was the worst time to take a risk. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And it's the same in life, is there? Again, it's the nature of the risk, isn't it? There's never going to be a perfect time necessarily to take a risk, but the heart. I want to get closer to Jesus. I want to know more of what he's doing. I want to see him more involved in my life. The perfect time for that is right now. It's the time to take the risk right now, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I think Peter wanted to live a supernatural life. I think he was an adventurous man, and I think we're called as Christians to live a life of adventure. And that doesn't stop when you turn 40 and you get a mortgage and you've got 3 kids and whatever you have, and now I got to play it safe. The people that have inspired me most in my life are people that in their 40s and 50s and even 60s are going again, and they're getting out of the boat and they're taking risks, and it's based on revelation.
Yes.
In fact, I know one couple that are repositioning to South Africa right now to start a church. Some of people might know them. They're in their early 60s, and their kids are saying to them, "What are you doing, Mum and Dad? You know, you could be settling down." But there's a risk that they're taking that's come from revelation that is going to lead to a great reward.
Yeah.
And so I think that God has got rewards for us, but in order to access the reward, we're going to have to take a risk and do something new.
Yeah.
And I think that's my encouragement, that's my inspiration in 2025 for Equippers Church in the UK. Are we a people that are willing to get out of the boat when God calls us to, and take a risk? And I think, like Peter, if we ask Jesus, should I come? That's a dangerous question.
Yeah.
I think the answer a lot of the time is going to be
yes. Amazing. We'll leave it there for this session. Thank you, Mark. I'm looking forward to this. Next couple of weeks, going to continue talking about risk and reward. But maybe you want to talk today in your eGroups about maybe some risks that you've taken in the past. But I think we need to start talking about what risks are we going to be taking for 2025. I think that will start to develop for all of us over the next couple of weeks. But you might have something in mind already. Let's share it. Why not have a chat about that tonight? Have a brilliant session. We'll see you next time for our next one on risk and reward.